Okay, welcome to the first ever episode of Holyrood 2021, the YouTube show where we'll be talking to candidates for the Scottish Parliament elections in May. And there's no better place to start than with the largest party in the Scottish Parliament, the SNP. And representing the SNP, I'm delighted to be joined by Rhuaraidh Fleming, who is a candidate for the seat of North East Fife. Hi, Rhuaraidh, how are you?
Hi, yeah, thank you very much. Doing grand.
It's good to have you on. So just start with a very simple question. Why do you want to be a member of the Scottish Parliament?
Yeah, okay. I've spent the last decade, my entire adult working life, working in and campaigning on issues affecting North East Fife. So I've spent, like I say, a full decade working for the people of North East Fife already, in roles, helping people with, their housing problems, their benefits problems, getting their bins collected, the whole gamut of issues that affect people. So it's an extension of that. It's wanting to help people who live in this area that I've come to know. I've come to know the area, the people, and it's just that capacity to help them even more that I want to develop. It really is just another way, another form of public service. That's what I want to do.
So if I'm right in saying it was a Lib Dem seat up to 2011, and then the SNP won it when they won their majority in 2011. Then the Lib Dems, I mean, it was Willie Rennie, the leader of the Lib Dems, won it back in 2016. So how confident are you can win it back in May?
Well, clearly we've done it before. We've won that, and we've won the Westminster seat as well. I mean, obviously North East Fife's pretty famous for the majority that we held it with in 2017. So we've done it before. There's no doubt that it is a difficult contest. Every constituency has its own difficulties. There's no such thing as a safe seat in Scotland. We've seen that since 2015. Really, any seat can fall. We proved that. We took so many of them in 15 and held on to them. But I believe we can win it, not least because we've won it before, but because of what's happening in the country, as in Scotland, in the UK more generally, and just globally. People are seeing change, and this is an opportunity to act upon that change and choose our own future. And I think that's what people want to do, and that's what my party offers.
I mean, it does interest me. You obviously going up against the party leader. Does that change how you approach it? Is there more of a sort of, I don't know, does the fact it's almost a bigger scalp make it more of a sort of incentive, or does it affect your approach at all?
No, it doesn't. It's because my campaign, what I'm doing, it's about what my party will do. It's about what the SNP will do, and it's about what I will do for the people in North East Fife. So to that extent, it doesn't matter, who else is in there, regardless. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to anybody else, but it's not important who else is in the running and what they're doing. I'm putting forward what I want to do and what I will do if I get elected, as well as the SNP's own record in government. So no, it doesn't really affect. It doesn't affect the positive campaign that I'm running.
Okay, so obviously the major policy of the SNP is independence. It's obviously what it's known for. Definitely in England, it's the only policy I think most people know about the SNP. So obviously, I'm assuming you are in favour of independence. I'm just wondering, what if someone asked you, say to you, why do you support independence? What would use your sort of immediate response?
To answer the first question, yes, I do support independence. Let's get that clear from the start. Why do I support it? There are many reasons. I mean, part of it goes back to, I suppose you could say that I'm a child of devolution. I've grown up almost always knowing there being a Scottish Parliament. I do remember very vaguely a time when there wasn't, but that's early primary school years. So to all intents and purposes, I've only ever known a Scottish Parliament. And obviously that's true for everyone my age and anyone else younger. So over those decades, over the last couple of decades, we've seen what Scotland can do, but we've also seen the constraints within devolution. So taking there's three big events I can think of that have happened to Scotland without any real desire for it. So that would be getting dragged into war in Iraq, getting austerity foisted upon us, and now being dragged out of the EU. Scotland didn't vote for any of those things, but they've been forced upon us anyway. And that's what I mean by the constraints of devolution. Others would include the Scottish government's having to mitigate the bedroom tax.
Mm.
A normal country with a properly functioning government shouldn't have to be preventing actions from another government that's being foisted upon us. That's not how normal countries should operate. So that's what I mean by the constraints of devolution, and that's where the opportunities of independence come from as well. We will no longer have to, divert money, frankly, from elsewhere to stop policies that we don't want, because what we want, we will vote for, and that is what we will get. We won't have to put up with the likes of Brexit, which very clearly nowhere in Scotland voted for. So it's that capacity to be a normal country, to get the governments that we vote for every time, and to not have decisions made for us, but instead have decisions made by us. Those are the key selling points for independence. And of course, going back, like I say, I've grown up only knowing really a Scottish Parliament, so it just seems bizarre that it doesn't have full powers, as a Parliament should.
Yeah, it is interesting. Obviously, you saying that I was born in '97, so my entire political life, obviously, I do not know a world about Scottish and Welsh devolution. So obviously the main response from the Tories when an independence referendum is asked is usually you had one in 2014, that was the will of the people, that's the end of the debate. And how would you respond to that claim, that accusation thrown at you?
Sure, it's a nonsense claim. It's accurate in the fact was the opinion at that time, but now a lot has happened in that time, and democracy didn't just suddenly stop in 2014. You can't just say that's it, we're never going to have another democratic event again, because they proved it. Actually, the Tories proved it themselves. I think the Labour Party proved it as well at the last general election. They both described the 2019 general election as a once-in-a-generation opportunity, which is an interesting turn of phrase for them to use, given the context. But since 2014, so much has changed, not least the Brexit issue, where, I'm sorry to repeat it again, but we were dragged out. Scotland didn't vote for it. There has been enormous change, and with the COVID pandemic as well now, we've seen a divergence in how the Scottish government's handled it, how the UK government's handled it. Obviously, you've seen divergence across the world in how it's been handled, but it's that ability to, as I say, do things differently according to localised needs. That's the important thing here. So the argument of that's been settled, it clearly hasn't. Look at the last 22, 23 polls. A majority actually want independence, so it's clearly not settled.
I was going to ask about the polling. I think it is 22 polls. We had 22 polls in a row. I think the Survation poll, I think, was 50-50, so it ended that sort of run, as it were. But why do you think we have seen? So we have seen a sort of general increase over the last year for independence based on polling. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we've seen that increase suddenly for independence?
I've questioned if it has been so sudden. Of course, there was 2014, and that's set in stone what happened there. But there has been an incremental increase since then. Obviously, it's only been bit by bit, percentage by percentage, but yes, this year's seen the sustained support for it. I think part of that does come down to how the people of Scotland have perceived their government handling things throughout the pandemic. They have seen the First Minister front and centre doing daily briefings, 4 or 5 days a week for almost a year now, and showing how Scotland has done things and how it could yet do things. So I think that it's show, don't tell, is something the First Minister said as well. It's demonstrating that these are the capacities of Scotland. This is what we're capable of, and I think people are reflecting on that and going, well, if that's what we can do under the current devolution settlement, we could do more as an independent country, and that does tack on to the Brexit thing. We saw it in the 2019 election, speaking to people on the doorsteps back when we could do such a thing.
Yeah.
People were coming. They appreciated the SNP's position. It was a very, very, very clear position that we held on it, and it's not changed. And I think people appreciate a principle like that. So I'd say those two factors have combined, I think, to help increase support for independence, which was already quite high, but that's what's...
Yeah. So well, obviously the last week we have seen the polls. They have shifted ever so slightly back towards, I guess you'd say, towards the unions. Like we saw, so we've written here, the Survation poll said it was 50-50 now, and the Ipsos Mori poll, I think it went from 56 to 52 in favour of it. So it's still a majority, but it's gone down a bit. Is that something to be concerned about, do you think, or do you think that's just a little blip in a week, as it were?
A couple of things. So, with the pollings, it's always best to compare it poll company by poll company. So compare Survation with Survation, compare Ipsos with Ipsos, and it's pretty much of a muchness. In terms of the actual numerical change, give or take, it's within the margin for error. So I wouldn't say it's something to be unduly concerned about, not least because Yes is still in the lead, so I'm not too concerned when we're still winning. I'd say, to go back to what I said earlier, the size of the majority isn't terribly important. It is the majority that's required. That's obviously a wee bit flippant, but because we do need to... The whole idea is that we need to take the majority of people to be convinced of the merits of independence, first of all, but also one of the key things is, in the event of a yes vote, which of course I anticipate, in the event of that, it's to make sure that those who didn't vote for it can still buy into the idea of it, buy into the process of it. We've seen the catastrophic mistakes that were made after the Brexit vote, and that's where we saw so many problems, because the winning side didn't take people with them. So that's where it's incumbent, and that's what I said actually at the start as well about the positive campaigning, so that people can buy into something good. They might not agree with it to the extent that they'd vote for it, but they can accept that this is a good, principled, reasonable position and something that can be bought into.
So I do want to move on to COVID, because it's incredible to think now it has been over a year. We're into March 2021. It's been obviously a horrible year. It's been a terrible year for so many people. I'm just wondering, obviously one of the big Conservative accusations you find on obviously Twitter is a place I like to look at quite a lot for nationalist and unionist opinion. One of the big accusations thrown at the SNP is this idea that you haven't focused fully on COVID. You've had, obviously, independence has been a distraction. It means you haven't focused on the pandemic. How would you respond to that claim?
I mean, you just need to look at what the Scottish Government's done and what the First Minister's done. Like I say, with the First Minister, first of all, doing her daily COVID briefings, that's given people an opportunity to know what is happening, why it's happening, and when it's happening, and also the reverse. So why something's going to stop happening, when, and what. So that's been helpful to get people to buy into what restrictions have had to be put in place for the global health, let alone the nation's health. So that connection with people has been important, and that sharing of information directly with people has been really helpful. I think also what we've seen, the budget that's before, the draft budget as it is just now, that's before the Scottish Parliament, I think that's also evidence of what the Scottish Government's doing to help people, not just through the pandemic, but beyond the pandemic. What we need to be doing, it can't just be a case of recover back to where we were this time last year, because that's a year lost. The idea needs to be that we need to go, okay, this is where we were. Where do we now want to be? And I think that's what the Scottish Government's doing. There is it's £1.8 billion worth of funding being put to aid the recovery and get to that point beyond where we were this time last year. There is the Young Person's Guarantee, there's the Green Jobs Fund. So there's a real focus, not just, and of course with the vaccine delivery that's been going on. I think it's just gone over 1.6 million people vaccinated in Scotland today, which is an incredible statistic. So the focus of the Scottish Government since day one has been on helping protect people from this horrific pandemic that's just, as you say, it's just turned everyone's lives upside down. And the sooner we're all out of it, the better.
Everyone can agree on that.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And it wouldn't make any sense for any government to do anything other than make this the most important issue, which the Scottish Government has done.
It really interests me. Another aspect of COVID. I mean, you did mention it earlier. The way people perceive devolution of this pandemic, and not just in Scotland, of course, but also in Wales and even in England. I think definitely, when you're talking to my gran, I don't think she ever quite appreciated just how much power and health the Scottish Parliament had before obviously this COVID pandemic. I'm just wondering, how do you think in Scotland perception of devolution has changed because of the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I think you're right to make the point about Wales as well, because we have seen the Welsh government take a different tact from, and the Northern Irish as well. It's been broadly the same but different, is what we're seeing from all four countries. And you're right. I think there has been, I don't know if it's an awakening or a reawakening of people's general awareness of the powers and the capacity of devolved governments. In terms of in Scotland, yes, like I keep saying, that direct connection between the First Minister and the people who watch the viewings, whether it's live on the news, on social media, wherever they're seeing it, I think that's really helped, and that has proven to people they might know that health is devolved, but that was in a theoretical sense. But now there's a real practical knowledge of just what that actually means, and all the cascading issues from that. So you've got your health, but then that means that finances, obviously, and then, well, what about social care? Well, yes, that as well. So there has been, like I say, I'm not sure, is it an awakening or a reawakening of knowledge that was already there? Yeah, but I think it has made people more aware of what powers the Scottish Government does currently have. And yes, like you say, it's not just in Scotland. It is across the UK as well.
This is a bit of a philosophical point, but do you think almost the fact that the Scottish Parliament has been able to do so much, do you think that almost puts more pressure on MSPs and possibly yourself in May to act, to do things, to make people's lives better? Do you think that almost puts more pressure on MSPs because people might realise actually these MSPs have got a lot more power than we thought?
I like to think that pressure already exists. I would like to hope that can exceed the level it's already at. Every MSP, all 129 of them currently there, should be at the maximum of their efforts anyway, to help the people that they've been elected to represent. I think possibly, but no, maybe not just now, but we've possibly seen it in previous years. So when more powers have been devolved to Scotland, then that has put additional pressure on the MSPs. And as a former MSPs member of staff, I must say their staff as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Without them, their offices wouldn't run. Yeah. They are the front-facing side of the MSPs. So I think that's when we've seen more powers devolved. That's seen more pressure put on them. But that's what I'm here for. That's the whole idea. It's not just to see more powers devolved. I want to see all powers, not just devolved, but back in Scotland where they belong, in my point of view, of course. So I see what you're trying to say. I do understand, but I think it's less apparent now than it was, as I say, in the previous occasions when we've had additional powers devolved to us.
Okay. So looking ahead post the election, assuming, I mean, the polls do suggest there'll be an SNP majority, or at least a pro-independence majority, maybe slightly short with the SNP, but the Greens will probably get you over the line, according to current polls. And of course, things can change. You've got to take polls with a pinch of salt. But obviously, I'm assuming then that the plan of the SNP is will then be to ask for a Section 30 to allow a second independence referendum. But obviously, Boris Johnson at the moment is making it very clear he's going to say no. And there's obviously been this discussion around the sort of the plan B. What do you do if you don't get a Section 30? So I'm just wondering, what were your views on that?
Yeah, well, like I say, all the polls currently point to this, but of course, there's only one poll that matters. And that'll be on the day. So we'll need to see what happens then. But yes, you're absolutely right. What we're working towards is getting that SNP majority, because in 2011, that's what we had. And under those circumstances, that's how we got the referendum. There's only so far that it's not just Boris Johnson. He's obviously the main cheerleader, but it's not just him. We are seeing the Conservatives, Labour, and the Liberal Democrats all banding around this idea of denying democracy, of saying thou shalt not have a say in your own future, which that anti-democratic position just isn't sustainable. In terms of, yes, of course, the preference is to go for the Section 30 so that we can operate under the same level of operations as we did in the 2014 referendum. I think that actually, I don't just think it, that has been recognised as a very good way of having done things. In the event that Boris Johnson does, for some reason, decide that he should continue to deny the people of Scotland the right to decide their own future, the Scottish Parliament's already passed the Referendums Act, which will enable the Scottish Parliament to hold a referendum on a subject of its choosing, a date of its choosing, and so on. So that legislation is already in place. Obviously, then it would be for the UK government, for Boris Johnson to decide, does he want to take that to court? Does he want to test whether the people of Scotland should have a say in their future through the legal system? I'm no legal expert. I don't know how well that would stand up in court. I wouldn't like to see it reach that position where the UK government would want to take that action. I'd like to think that they would rather support the right of people to choose their own future. We see it in Tory. I've seen it in Tory election literature for their selections at the Scottish Parliament election. They want to ensure people can have a say at as local a level as possible. Well, what better example than a referendum in Scotland by the people who live in Scotland on their own future? But that's, like I say, getting that SNP majority is the goal. That is the target. But obviously, we'll only get there if people vote for the SNP, and then negotiations would begin.
Yeah. So finally, I want to ask you about North East Fife. Obviously, you know it far better than I do as a constituency, as a place. So I'm just wondering, what are the local issues in North East Fife which you, if you're elected as an MSP, you'll really push in the Scottish Parliament? What are the things that people in North East Fife want you to push for, other than obviously tackling the COVID pandemic and independence, obviously two massive issues? But what are the sort of other things that are local to North East Fife which matter?
Okay. Well, yeah, you've named the two big ones, but the third big one is the aftermath of Brexit. We are North East Fife's got a fishing and farming community, and we've seen the impact. We're only 2 months into the year. We've seen the impact that's had on those industries already. The struggle that they've faced, but it's not just them. So North East Fife, obviously, it's got a large tourism industry as well. Home to St Andrews, it's got the East Nuka Fife. It's an ideal tourism location for whenever borders open up again. So there's some hidden Brexit consequences because of COVID, but there will be businesses that will struggle even more, even when they're able to reopen, because of that sudden dramatic loss of trade because of Brexit. So again, going back to what happened in the 2019 election, we did have people who were adamant that we must well, at that point, remain in the EU.
Yeah.
Or if that's not possible because of the timescale involved, rejoin. And obviously, with the two big parties there being the SNP and the Lib Dems, it's a whopping big majority. About 90% of people voted for pro-EU parties in 2019. So that rejoining the EU is key, is really important to lots of people who live in North East Fife. More locally, though, there are things, obviously it's dealing with powers that are devolved. So there are education. North East Fife's had two schools rebuilt. And it's making sure that young people who have been so badly affected by the pandemic, it's that their opportunities aren't limited, they're not restricted. So making sure we get their education right, but also their next destinations right. And that's what I was saying earlier about the support the Scottish Government's put in place, the Young Person's Guarantee, making sure they've got a positive destination, work, training, further education. So making sure every aspect of that works. And the final one, just in terms of hyper-local issue, we've got national right down, it's in North East Fife, it's actually road safety. So there's, like I say, with the large farming industry and the large tourism sector, these are country roads. And with the bad weather we've had as well, so need to work with the local authority on that.
Okay, I mean, that's really. I do like to discuss the local issues as well as obviously the big national issues. Rhuaraidh Fleming, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you on. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, thank you for watching this latest episode of PhD-Politico discussions. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to give it a like. And if you want to watch more content like this, then please do subscribe. Bye guys.